My parents made everything about my little autistic brother. So in NW I'm getting my revenge and calling them out. Those with spoiled siblings, when did your parents realize they terribly messed up? I have a brother who is about 6 years younger than me. He was excessively coddled by my parents due to being diagnosed with high-functioning autism at the age of 4. Other than that, he seems very normal, just unbelievably spoiled. He would use his privileged position to get his way most of the time, and by most, I mean nearly all the time. Whatever I had, he also had to have, resulting in us having duplicates of almost everything except shared items. And anything he had that I didn't, he'd rub in my face however he could. When I was 11, I pleaded with my parents for a 3DS for my 12th birthday. I got one, but then I was told to lend it to my brother whenever he wanted it, or else they would take it away from me. Which it was, a lot. When my aunt witnessed my parents forcibly taking my 3DS out of my hands to give it to my brother during one of her visits, she let loose on them for such blatant favoritism. They returned my 3DS immediately, then blamed me for the situation after my aunt left. They didn't make me give it to my brother again. Instead, a few days later, my parents went out and bought another 3DS as a surprise gift for my brother. On several occasions, including mine and other people's birthdays, my brother would throw a tantrum because the party wasn't entirely about him. He would go as far as outright stating that he was upset because he wasn't receiving any gifts or getting to blow out the candles on the cake. My parents learned the hard way that they couldn't enable my brother's behavior at those parties and were actually kicked out of a few for attempting to do so. As a result, other kids at his school stopped inviting him to their birthday parties altogether. For me, my birthdays were some of the only days where I could have the focus on myself. Otherwise, my parents forced my life to revolve around my little brother. The year prior to the incident I'm describing, my parents ended up paying more attention to him throughout my entire 13th birthday. They even asked me if I would let my brother blow out my candles for me because he was upset and pouting. I refused because I wanted to blow out my own candles. At first, they called me a spoiled brat until my aunt intervened and chastised them for their favoritism once again. She pointed out how my brother got nearly everything between the two of us just because he's autistic. My parents received no support from anyone else present, except my brother who was still crying because he wasn't getting to blow out my candles. Because he didn't get his way, he tried to spit on my cake out of spite. Fortunately, my awesome aunt blocked him before he had the chance and scolded him until he ran to my mom in tears. This time around, they stopped his tantrum when he wanted to push my cake off the table. For the first time since he was a toddler, my brother received a timeout, and my mom had to stay with him to ensure he didn't do anything crazy. He tried several times to run toward the cake with a stack of presents, but there was always at least one adult on guard. Even my dad stood watch to keep him away. My mom ended up having to take my little brother to a nearby McDonald's so he could have fun in their play area. I later heard that she spent at least an hour trying to get him to come out of the play structure. He only came out because he needed to use the bathroom. Then he tried to run back in again. While I still lived with them, my parents never attempted to cancel my birthday again. My parents faced a lot of criticism from the other adults there, and they promised never to ask me to let my brother blow out my candles again. However, for the rest of the party, they mostly just went through the motions. My aunt pretty much took over coordinating everything from that point on. A couple of weeks before my birthday the following year, my parents sat me down and informed me that they would still get me some gifts and a small cake. However, my birthday party was effectively cancelled to avoid my brother having another meltdown. I told them I couldn't believe they were doing this to me, and they just seemed to shrug it off without a care. So, over the next week, I told my friends, teachers, and even my school counselor about the situation. All of them were appalled by my parents' lack of consideration or empathy. The vice principal even found out and consoled me. Through social media, news of the situation reached my parents. As a result, they grounded and gaslighted me for telling so many people. But that still didn't stop me. I then started telling everyone at school that I was grounded for being upset. This worsened the situation because several parents contacted them, basically saying, "What the hell is wrong with you?" Suddenly, I was ungrounded, but I didn't receive an apology. My dad simply walked into my room with his arms crossed, informed me that I was ungrounded, and then walked out. That was it. I thought my party was still cancelled because nobody said anything about it. My brother found it hilarious and taunted me about not getting to celebrate. However, by the end of the 2 weeks, my parents held a surprise party for me at my favorite restaurant. They started claiming that was their intention all along, but I knew it wasn't true. From what I had seen, everyone was incredibly unhappy with them for what they did, and it showed in their interactions with my parents. So, they ended up throwing the surprise party to try and salvage what little of their reputations they had left. But I'm pretty sure they had to spend a significant amount of money that day just to accommodate me. I had dinner with all my friends at my favorite restaurant, which had a small arcade. I even received the PS4 gaming system that I had been yearning for at that time. I could tell it was all pretty much planned and bought last minute. My dad had a look about him that my aunt comically described as looking like a moth had flown out of his wallet. Of course, my brother made a huge fuss about me getting that surprise party. But what he did next was even worse than what I had expected. My parents made everything about my little autistic brother. So now I'm getting my revenge and calling them out. My brother grabbed the family cat and started tormenting it. He was clearly trying to get the attention of the party. My parents have seen him torture the cat many times, but usually they just try and distract and reward him. But with so many of my friends and their parents present, my mom and dad finally put their feet down with my brother. However, they never again put in as much effort or spent as much. For the remaining 4 years I was under their roof, my birthday parties consisted of a local pizza parlor, a cake without even my name written on it, and no gifts. I don't mean to sound spoiled, but I was somewhat disappointed that I never received a cake with my name on it again. Each year, my aunt called my parents out on that, and each year they claimed they had forgotten to get the cake decorated. I suspect the reason my name was never written on another cake was that my brother always refused to eat pieces of cake that had someone else's name on it at any party. They couldn't put his name on any of my cakes either, as it would have looked very bad for them. Nevertheless, the fact that I still had a day that was solely about me and not my brother was fantastic in my book, especially considering that everything else revolved around him. During each of my remaining birthday parties while I still lived at home, my brother would create a fuss, and my mom would take him somewhere else to calm him down. I was still required to share my PS4 with my brother, but it was still mine. I took it with me when I moved out at 18. My little brother did not appreciate that and threw a huge fit until my parents went out and bought another PS4 for him. When I moved out, my parents finally had to confront the consequences of raising my brother to be so spoiled because I wasn't there to assist them with him anymore. On his recent 14th birthday, he went into a rage at our parents for not getting him a PS5. He is now currently grounded for I don't know how long after causing hundreds or maybe even thousands in collateral damage during his rampage. He picked up a chair and started smashing anything in front of him with it. When I last saw my parents, they appeared mentally checked out. My aunt has also informed me that they confided in her about how they wish they could send my brother to a military or boarding school in the future because they can no longer handle the monster they create. However, they are unable to afford such an option. I would be lying if I said I didn't find it ironically funny.